Good afternoon, everybody. Right. There's no slides, I don't think. That's just the one. Cool. It's great to be here, and as I've said all day, great to see so many familiar faces in the crowd today. As Olga said, in my role as the Director of Technologies at Sekuro, I'm really lucky that I get to work with our technology partners on a daily basis. And today I feel really privileged to get to host some very impressive panelists from some of our key technology partners and platinum sponsors for Sekurokon'. First up, we have Fabio Fratucello, who's the International Field CTO for CrowdStrike. Secondly, an international visitor, Mario Puras, who's the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Solutions Engineering from Netscope. That is a mouthful. And finally, the co-founder and CEO of Airlock Digital, David Cottingham, who's the only one that doesn't end in an IO today, so thanks, David. Could you please give a big hand while we welcome our three panelists to the stage? Welcome, gents. I'm going to stay standing, I think. Oh. Now, I'm sure Olga introduced it, even though we weren't in the room for it, but our themes for today are leadership, innovation, and collaboration. And it's three things that I'm sure you've seen today Sekuro is extremely passionate about, and having worked with your organizations for a number of years, I know that you are too. I'm excited to get stuck into it, so let's get going. First of all, I've done a few of these panels, so I'm going to keep this really short. Can I ask each of you to give me, or give us, a 1-minute introduction to your organization, your role, and just a little bit about why you're here with us today. Let's start with yourself, Fabio.
All right. It's working? Yeah. Very nice to be here today. Fabio Fratucello, Field CTO for International Market at CrowdStrike. So I lead a team of technology strategists across Asia Pacific, Japan, Middle East, Turkey and Africa, and Europe. We do predominantly two things. One is working with customer partners, the field organization, to make sure there is a thorough understanding of the threat landscape. And more importantly, we evangelize the CrowdStrike capabilities and the ecosystem capability to respond to the threat landscape. And then with the amount of insight, conversation, and feedbacks that are gathered through the field conversation, we work with product groups and engineering to create the next phase of defensive capabilities from CrowdStrike. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. I'll give you marks for just a little bit over a minute. Yourself, Fabio?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my name's David Cottingham. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Airlock Digital. And I started the company about 10 years ago to solve the challenge of application control or allow listing. I just felt that as a practitioner, I was struggling to sort of prevent ransomware and malware on endpoints in my organization. And I had to find a solution to actually prevent the execution of untrusted code, and most importantly doing that at scale. And I was so frustrated by it that it pushed me to actually start building my own tools, which turned into what the product is today. It's fantastic to be here today and with a partner, Sekuro. We're a software company first and foremost, and we want to partner with fantastic services organizations, especially Sekuro, that really go into our customers' networks and understand and execute really well on delivery and be an expertise in that space. And we can do the work on the software side. So thank you.
1 second over. Well done, mate.
I'm going to shatter that record.
Mario, over to you, mate.
So first of all, I want to shout out to my wife. It's the first time she's ever seen me on stage. So Mario Puras, I head of Global Solutions Engineering and Architecture for Netscope. I've been with the company for just over 11 years, even before we had products, and so I've been here quite a bit. So my team is responsible for basically consulting, architecting, and then really driving the validations of our innovative solutions to market, and that's on a global basis. And then as far as, I'm assuming all of you know who Netscope is, so I'm not going to spend some time saying who we are, but if you're interested, I can do it offline. But outside of that, I'm looking forward to sharing insight around the cutting leading edge, type of innovations and technologies that we have here, along with the collaboration that goes on with us vendors in the industry to really help organizations make the most and ultimately achieve their security goals.
Wonderful, thank you. I have some questions for each of the panelists individually, but I do encourage you all to, if you have anything to add, jump in. Let's make it an open conversation, and I do as little talking as possible. That's the plan. David, for yourself, as the co-founder and CEO of a leading Australian tech organisation, in an industry where trends change on an almost daily basis, how do you position Airlock to not just follow those trends, but really lead them?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. I feel as though Airlock, what we build in the company, is a little bit of an anti-play on the market. You know, the whole company was sort of born out of a bit of a lack of any solution in the space. I feel as though if there was one, we wouldn't exist today. And I'm actually quite surprised that, especially in the application control area, there's really not much has changed over the last 10 or 11 years. You know, everyone knows that it's an effective control, so I'm just surprised that it just hasn't been really addressed, and it's taken us to really build something to make it work. I think, you know, to that end, starting the company, we didn't really follow any sort of security trends that are out there. We sort of decided to generally ignore that and sort of forge our own path. I really try inside the company to make sure that we're not getting too distracted by what, you know, other things that are going on, and instead, you know, taking, I guess, my practitioner background and focus, and really focusing on what, you know, if I was a practitioner, I'm sitting there trying to defend my network, what are the things that we can do in order to actually sort of move the needle and defend against that? And to me, it's about foundational security, you know, preventing code execution. And I feel as though, you know, for me anyway, that trends can at times be distracting. That's not to say that we shouldn't pay attention to what's happening in the industry. There's, you know, fantastic innovation that's going on. But generally where we look in you know, order to figure out how to go forward is really, one thing is about paying attention to compliance and regulation, so seeing what organisations are actually being required to do, making sure that what we're developing is effective, and most importantly, carving out space and time to really think inside the company about sort of what's next, and trying to figure out things that others necessarily aren't doing, and what sort of big niche we can sort of carve out, you know, because I think there's so many market leaders in the space, and you know, we leave everyone else up to their expertise, and we can stay in our own lane and be that in ours. So, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, mate. Anybody got anything to add to that? No? Perfect. Well, I've got a question for you, Fabio. I know within your role, a huge part of it is keeping your finger on the pulse of new and emerging threats. A two-part question. Firstly, how do you do that? And secondly, how do you think our customers and clients in the audience can do that when most of the time they're busy keeping the lights on? Yeah, absolutely.
Look, at CrowdStrike, we're uniquely positioned to take the pulse on the threat landscape. We are a global threat intelligence provider, and you know, there's several avenues that allows us to do so. The first one is probably going to the origin of the organization, which is what we call the power of the crowd, which is the concept of when a defender get attacked, we have the ability to harness the telemetry from the sensor, from the runtime, and then use that information, process it, and make, you know, detection mechanisms available for the rest of the crowd. The second avenue is really through the threat intelligence practice. You know, it's a 24/7 operations where we constantly monitor what the threat adversaries are doing, and then it's about processing threat intelligence and working on dissemination and making sure that there is an outcome out of that information. And the third one, actually, to not be forgot, is through the incident response practice. So that's where, you know, customers are most vulnerable, and it's probably one of the toughest situation from a customer, and we run to the fires with them. We do incident response activities, and again, there's a great information, great telemetry through that process. In terms of how we then work with the partners and with the customer to disseminate and make use of this information. Well, first of all, there's products that we sell, so here's one for everyone. But more importantly, there's a number of avenues through webinars, through conversation, through events like this one, when we have side of the bars conversation about threat intelligence, threat landscape. There's conference like I was in Galway last week, where we had a lengthy conversation with governance and industry about the threat landscape and what holistically as defender we can do to defend and to put the bad guys in the right place.
Brilliant. So beyond the technologies and the tools you have in place, it's more about the community and sharing information with each other.
Absolutely.
Cool. Anybody have any questions or comments on that, guys? No? Perfect. I'm going to get you talking to each other at one point, I promise. Mario, just focus on the SASE space for a moment. We've seen mass adoption in your area over the past few years, and you've been in the business long enough to see that. What trends and technologies do you see in the industry that are really going to have the most significant impact, let's say, in the next 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, we're sort of living it now. So before I get to the sort of emerging technologies and trends that I'll speak about here in a minute, it's important to understand that SSE, which is one half of sort of the equation that we participate in, it's a transformational technology. Right? You can read any Gartner hype cycle in the last 2-3 years, and they will all tell you SSE, which is the security side of the bigger SASE technology, is transformational. SSE and its core components consist of CASB, ZTNA, and then what we call Secure Web Gateway. Those are the three most foundational technologies that make up the SSE category. There's other technologies, but those are three important ones. And these three have to be delivered from a cloud native platform as converged services. Okay? So when we start talking about emerging technologies, it's really the combination of SSE, the security side, coupled with what the industry is tracking as SD-WAN, which the SD-WAN component is what most people refer to as the WAN edge, and then the combined technologies are referred to as SASE, right? And so we're living this emerging technology that's going to happen over the next, I would say, 3 to 5 years. So we're still in the early stages of that. But as far as trends go, there's probably 5 of them that really come to mind. As far as the themes that are really still very much active. I would say the first one, we all love this terminology, is really digital transformation. You can go ahead and roll your eyes. There's not one meeting I don't go to that somebody doesn't mention that. But digital transformation, if you're going to thrive in this environment, the organizations really have to migrate the architecture, the VP, the apps, and the data to cloud, right? And so we have hybrid work and mobility that have really just become the norm as part of this, this massive transformation effort that we're all living. But unless you're able to secure these technologies, you're not going to have long-term success. So I would say that's the first one. Generative AI, again, roll your eyes. Generative AI is another one where we're still early on, but unless you're protecting the data that feeds these engines and feeds the inputs that go into a generative AI application, and you're protecting the outputs that come out of there, it's not going to have its long-term full potential that we can get. The third one I would say is really the consolidation and the platform approaches that we're seeing. So we did a survey, and we basically asked customers, roughly how many security tools do you currently manage in your environment? And the average enterprise has 76 tools for which they have to maintain, right? That in itself is pretty amazing. And the highest it went to is just over 200. But the important part is that 50% or more of their time is actually used to keep the lights on, just maintaining these applications. And so the customers are really looking for a much more simplified, operational model where they can simplify the security and the networking side of the operations. But the other part, which really speaks to us here on the panel, is the integration that goes on with these platforms, right? The ecosystem of partners and how we integrate into each other, which I think is super important. At the board level, the CIOs, two words that are constantly coming up. One is resilience and performance. These two terminologies are constantly being brought up at the board level. One, because it's to the CIO, stability, resilience, and performance are top priorities for them, right? They're not the highest, but they're certainly in the argument. Why? And it really comes down to what I would say is business continuity to protect the revenue, right? And so they're myopically focused around that. And I would say the last one is sort of what I was talking about earlier, is all about the data. Data is the new oil, as we say. And so unless you're able to protect this data, you understand where the data is, who's got access to it, what type of data is sitting out there, you're really at a disadvantage. And for those of you that haven't seen the announcement, this is exactly why Netscope made an acquisition earlier this week, is to really expand the leadership in data protection into the data security posture management.
Awesome. Thank you, mate. You touched on something there, which I'm going to jump ahead because we were going to talk about this a little later, but the collaboration and the integrations between technology providers out there. At Sekuro, we're constantly telling our customers that the future of security, it has to involve not just integrations, but true collaboration, which I know your three organizations are big on. Could you share any examples of where the collaboration, and particularly between the partners on the panel, have helped you improve? Fabio, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think there's two macro themes. One is the platform consolidation that you already spoke about, right? It is a massive trend. It's a common conversation from the customers. And then there's the level of integration and the level of openness that those platforms needs to have in order for us to coexist and work together. If we think about, the control set that we bring and how you're going to model those controls in a multi-layered approach in a customer environment, there is a need for SASE to talk with to the endpoint, to talk with the application stack, and really for the data to flow from one to another, to have a concept of common data taxonomy so that we can run all the various levels of innovation, where is mathematical models, ML, Gen AI, or whatever you want to call it, but we need to be able to exchange data seamlessly. We need to be able to integrate to each other and actually take that effort away from the customer as much as possible, and potentially working with partners to make sure we deliver true outcomes as opposed to asking the customers to be data plumbers all the time.
That last point he made is spot on. If you don't mind, I'll go next.
Oh, please, I told you I'd get you talking to each other.
Hug the mic. One of the biggest challenges that I'm constantly seeing is that, actually, to speak to the example that you wanted us to speak on, there was a global manufacturer, and there was basically 5 vendors that were involved: CrowdStrike, Netscope, Okta, Mimecast, and then ServiceNow. And the biggest challenge that customers are facing, I'd say one of the biggest challenges customers are facing, is that all of these vendors claim to have the best set of data, right? And they're all sort of reporting on whether it's human risk management and how do we proactively identify behavior of potential risk to a user. We also go about identifying risky users in the context of what they're doing, perhaps with cloud applications, perhaps with the activity with the data, et cetera. But we all have different definitions on what we call risk, right? And risk to our platform may be completely different definition to risk to your platform, and so on. And so the biggest challenge that the customer has is, how do I normalize all this information? Right? And it's not even about normalizing the information. It's like, bubble it up to tell me that there's a problem and tell me what to do about it. And I think that's where AI is going to really solve for that challenge. But the example that I would give you is that, as vendors, we came together and we said, you don't need to know the definition of risk that Netscope has. You also don't need to know what the definition from Mimecast or CrowdStrike or Okta. We all have different. We're just going to bubble up one variable, one attribute, that if you see this, you have big challenges, and we're going to tell you what it means. And so we were able to normalize this information across platforms to really bring about a more meaningful way of identifying and understanding risk.
Awesome, that is a great example. Thank you, mate. David?
Yeah, and I think, look, I've definitely seen a shift, being very close to software development over the last number of years of, vendors being willing to collaborate. 10 years ago, I would say that vendors talked to each other very little, and they were very guarded. But I think that there's been a big shift in the marketplace to say, well, we've either got a mutual customer, let's work together and cut the customer out and just focus on the value, and that's been a really, promising shift. But I think, it's nothing more than making sure that we're delivering value together, because if you're not working together, you're sort of sabotaging both in many times if software's not playing nice, especially in the complex ecosystem. I think it would be remiss of us, of vendors, not to also look at what's happened in the ecosystem in the space over the last sort of 5 years as well. There's a huge amount of consolidation that's out there, and without naming names, but I think that we all also need to work together and sell our value together, and making sure that we're aligned with our customers' stacks in order to deliver that seamless approach. So,
Brilliant. Thank you, gents. Just to wind back a little bit and go back to the conversation we're having around innovation. Fabio, CrowdStrike have been doing this for a long time, evolving and constantly coming to market with new solutions. How does the organization, should I say, balance forward-thinking innovation with maintaining trust in established practices and making sure that your customers still have that trust even though it's a new solution?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The short answer, we actually have to do both, and we have to do both right? If I think of some of the more maybe traditional these days or established control, I can think of CrowdStrike was born with threat intelligence and EDR, endpoint detection and response. And we're being a leader in those areas, but we need to continue to evolve, because we're seeing what the adversaries are doing. They're not standing still. They continue to improve in their threat craft. They continue to become more faster and sophisticated. And so, for example, in that area, we just recently announced how we can improve the analyst experience. How do we get data into the platform quicker, better, cheaper? How do we improve detection capabilities through statistic, mathematical models? How can we use new technologies, generative AI, for example, to improve orchestration, to facilitate response activities, and how overall we can use an array of different capabilities and technology to better manage the security posture. But at the same time, I mentioned GenAI, we laughed about a couple of times already. That's another area where there's huge potential, right? And so it's really about acquiring the right intelligence and capability and really embracing change, because we're seeing from our side, from the vendors, we know the adversaries are embracing those technologies. They don't have security architects to have to go through to put them in production. There's no change management, so they're really fast in understanding and utilizing those technology at their advantage. We need to do the same from a defensive standpoint.
Brilliant. And David, that kind of leads into you running an organization like you do. When you're looking at all of these changes that are happening in real time, how far in the future do you look with your innovation roadmap, like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and with our customers who are dealing with the same stuff on a daily basis, how far in the future do you think they should be looking?
Yeah, time is a really interesting measure because I think we look forward about 3 years at the moment in terms of what we're building, but at the same time you need to be able to change and adapt and be agile, because it's nearly impossible to say that, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to deliver in 3 years and stick to that. We often have product roadmap shuffles due to requirements within like 6 months in some cases, just because the need has changed or the requirements have changed or something has happened in the ecosystem that requires us to pivot. I don't think that's the same necessarily for, I think that's a bit more unique for software. In terms of an organization, I think in terms of the planning, it really depends on where you're going with a foundational technology roadmap what types of technologies you're going to have in your organization. You know, if you decided to pivot the whole organization to using just Chromebooks, your security stack will look a lot differently to maybe what it does today. So I think it's really about just understanding where you're going in as a business, and then making sure that whatever you're doing in the security space is really aligning to that. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm going to throw the same, a very similar question over to Mario, but just before I do, there will be questions from the audience in the next couple of minutes, so get thinking now, and then I'll come to you guys afterwards. Yeah, Mario, with your team, it's a very similar question, but in terms of what you ask of your team, how much importance do you put on the difference between planning versus agility?
Yeah, so I have different teams that are more skilled or more tenured at different things, and so they tend to focus a little bit more short-term versus long-term. So, for example, the sort of the office of the CTO and the architects, they're more technologists. They're going to be helping feed the roadmap more long-term to help us, guide the company into what's coming down the pipe further out. But the architects as well, but as well as my solutions engineers, they're more about being agile, right? They need to be able to pivot based on customer needs and demands that are happening in the field. And so we have to work closely with the product team, the engineering team, to bring about new capabilities, new features, or what have you. And then ultimately, respond to the changes that are happening in the market space and the changes that the customers are sort of bringing up. We have to be able to deliver, I would say, short-term value. That doesn't mean there's no long-term value, but these customers are looking for a return on their investment. They're looking to solve major challenges. Being adaptable to change, I think, is probably the most important attribute to lead in this new era. Is that adaptability piece of it. Innovation is happening everywhere, and I think if you don't adapt, you'll either be disrupted or by innovation, or you won't be around, right? And so, but anyway, so I have both. I have short-term and long-term focus on the team.
Brilliant. And I guess a question off the back of that, when you're looking at the people in your team, do you look for people with different attributes in terms of short-term and long-term thinking?
I do. Want me to take?
Yeah, please.
So I would say in terms of the sort of qualities or the attributes that I look for, it depends if I'm looking for an engineer type or a leader, right? First of all, in my organization, having sort of a strong foundational technical skill set is paramount, right? But that alone is not going to solve anything, right? But the challenge that we have is that everyone is looking for that sort of immediate gratification, and we're not going to have overnight success, right? And so I really need people to have that grit, that passion, that perseverance to understand that there will be setbacks, and we will encounter, headwinds, and you just need to push through, right? And so I would say the grit is really important. The technical skill sets are really important. I think empathy is another area that we don't put enough emphasis on, because you have to be able to be understand and relate to the challenges, the needs that the customers are facing, and work with them on their biggest challenges to solve, right? So I think empathy is another area. If I'm looking for an engineer, I think curiosity is one that we often really dig on, because you have to be able to be curious beyond sort of the immediate challenge that you're faced with. And I think that really sets apart really strong engineers. But on the leader side, the adaptability piece, to me, is top of mind. It's actually what I refer to as the third quotient. We have IQ, we have EQ. This is AQ to me. Adaptability to me is AQ. I often say that you're either going to be disrupted or you're going to disrupt. But disruption is continuous, right? And so if you're disrupted, that's sort of on you. But you should also be looking for opportunities to disrupt. And so you have to be adaptable to the changes that that need to have. And the last one to me is sort of the cultural fit. It's just a non-negotiable. You have to align to the company values. The magic of the team working together really comes to life when you have alignment and you have a common goal and a mission that the team shares.
Awesome. Yeah, David.
Yeah,
can see
I
you
would
got
say
something to
do not create a team that has exactly the same type of people in it, and that's it, because you will end up in tunnel vision to a particular point. I like to think of it as healthy tension across the business, and there has to be a push and pull. There's always a different side. For good sales function, you need a strong finance function as well. Otherwise, you'll tip the scales too one way, and you'll have some fantastic dinners, but that won't end you up in a good place if you don't have finance pulling you back. And it's the same across the business. One of it's been interesting watching the evolution of Airlock as a company. We had great technical support. You can contact someone and get the answer you need, but quickly realized that a lot of the technical people started to just sort of lose, I guess, a bit of direction as to where we were going and what they were doing, and we needed to hire someone that was foundationally different. It intentionally was not technical to lead that team, because they don't want to get dragged down into the detail, but they need to set the strategy and the tone, and that was the best thing that we've ever done. So, I think that it's really important to get that difference in there.
That's a great insight.
Great point.
Well, Fabio, anything to add to that in our last minute?
No, I think you guys covered very well. A point is the technical proficiency, that's just the foundation, right? So there's attributes that we always look on top of the profession, right? And when we think about adaptability, curiosity, when we think about collaboration, being able to work internally, externally, with the partners, with the customers. And for us at CrowdStrike, it's been mission-driven, right? So everything that we do is about stopping the breaches. So how do we bring, that mission into not only software engineering when we create new products, but as part of working with the customers, the sales organization, the channel organization. And so really make sure that we are driving the right outcomes for the globe.
Awesome. Thank you, mate. And thank you to all three of you. I have run out of time to ask for questions from the audience, but I'll be around, and I'm sure the guys will be around for drinks afterwards. If you do have any questions, feel free to come up and tap them on the shoulder. Thank you all. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.